As a new player, if you ask for tips, you might get some shallow responses. Things like don't play a skeleton army into a Valkyrie is self-explanatory, as in you would figure it out from personal experience. But some other advice, like using the Royale delivery on a goblin barrel so that you can save your log for princess against log bait, can speed up your improvement journey by quite a significant amount of time. Now, one of the least discussed topics in this community is deciding which lane to attack from. Obviously, I'm not talking about picking right or left lane at the start of the match, because that really doesn't matter. But what I'm trying to talk about is deciding whether you want to attack on the same lane or the opposite lane of your opponent. This changes depending not only on what deck you are playing, but also what deck your opponent has. Some cases can be a no-brainer, like you don't want to push with a Sparky into an Electro Dragon, but some other cases can be kinda puzzling. Like, did you know that going same lane with Giant Double Prince is better against some Golem decks? So I present you with same lane versus opposite lane. Starting with the most basic rule of thumb, and it is that cheaper decks / win conditions usually want to play opposite lane for like two main reasons. First of all, it makes punishing the heavier deck when they try to start a push possible, which gives you more control. Does that mean you can't punish if you are in the same lane? Well, not entirely. It mostly depends on your win condition and what cards they are playing, because punishing in the same lane can allow them to eat some damage to prepare for a really big push. As a player with a heavy deck, one thing you could do is to allow the cycle player to get a tiny bit of damage on one of your towers. This forces them to always attack on that side, because to them a few hundred damage needs way more effort, so switching lanes would be dumb most of the time. Whereas for a heavy deck, switching towers mid-game doesn't really matter that much, as they usually take down a tower in one push anyway. So taking some damage early on to dictate where the action in this match will be is a legit strategy in some cases. And if you for some reason still want to play opposite lane as the beatdown player, you can drop a small card on the same lane before deploying your tank, just to prevent them from punishing you, as they wouldn't really want to push into it. The second reason takes into account how the result of having both players push into each other would turn out. It doesn't take a genius to realize how horrible it would go if you push with a Hog Rider into a Sparky. But things aren't really as simple as this. I mean, for example, having the exact same support troops on a Giant and a Golem push would result in the Golem player's troop killing the Giant earlier, which allows them to start attacking the other troops first, making this exchange better for the heavier tank, which is quite obvious. However, life is not black and white, because most Golem decks run Baby Dragon, Night Witch, and Giant decks usually play Double Prince, so they can out DPS despite having a cheaper win condition. Therefore, in Golem Giant matchups, usually I prefer going same lane. So while the thickness of the win condition is the main factor, the support troops of both decks play a major role in determining which player benefits from going same lane in any matchup. Lava Hound usually always goes same lane due to how untouchable air troops are, but against Electro Giant, they would be unable to support their Lava Hound, since every card is gonna be dying from that reflection. Assess the matchup mid-game and take a decision based on the circumstances. Oh, also, I don't know if you kind of thought about this, but you don't really have to push at the same time. A lot of decks go same lane, but as a defend then counter push playstyle instead of brute forcing their way by winning a bridge fight when pushing at the same time of your opponent. Playing like that in the same lane will prevent your opponent from orchestrating a push, because every time they play a card in the back, you just match it on your own side with a card that would basically clog up the entire lane. They might try to do a sneak attack on the opposite lane, but some decks can't do that effectively even if you deployed something expensive, because their 10 elixir on the bridge might be unreliable, while the other decks are like,
"Excuse me, sir, I'd like to show you a magic trick I've been working on. Pick a card, any card."
What's hilarious is that against bad players, you could accidentally drop a troop on the opposite lane to trick them into a false sense of security if you know that their cards are the type that can be kited really easily. Obviously, while this trick is doable with short-ranged cards, The ones with very long range are more effective at it. Sometimes they don't even require you to guide the enemy troops at all. And Fisherman, specifically out of all of them, works the best in this case, as he shifts the damage from the tower into the King Tower and works on building targeting troops as well. In general, any high ranged card is better played in the opposite lane from the opponent because it might outrange their card without ever getting detected. And like, if you have enough range to play cards in the opposite lane, I don't see why not abuse that advantage to avoid giving them spell value, and potentially you'd have your troops survive the enemy push. Hey princess, can you abuse your range for me?
Bullseye.
Now, a lot of the examples were very oddly specific, like how going Expo opposite lane allows you to pull a balloon all the way to the other lane, or how it's best to go same lane as a pump to try to break it after your push, which might get you to think, are we really gonna go over all the niche situations that we can find? No. I came up with a system that I'm hoping would help you decide during the match itself. We all know some cards like Hog Rider are almost always played on the bridge. I will be calling those cards the active cards since you use them to initiate with your opponent. And then you have cards that I will call reactive cards, as they tend to be played reactively on defense instead of getting cycled on the bridge or behind the tower. I want to make a few things clear. The activeness and reactiveness of a card is a spectrum, as some cards are definitely more reactive than others. Like, we can't say that Bowler is only an active card, as instead of always playing him in the back, you might want to play him reactively on defense sometimes. And we can't say that Log is only a reactive card, because while it's mostly used on defense, you can still use it actively to get some tower damage. But how do you know where does a card fall on this spectrum? It depends on the card type. For example, a spell is mostly reactive, since you would be hoping to hit a troop with it. However, the cheaper the spell is, the more open people would be to cycling it on tower for damage. So for spells, the more expensive they are, the more reactive they become, since rocketing a blank tower is a bad idea. For troops, the slower they are, the more active they would be, since that keeps them on your side of the arena for longer. This helps them become a part of a bigger push, or allows them to abuse your crown towers in 1v1s if the opponent played something in response to them. Range also helps in that regard, as it would allow them to stay on your side so that you can protect them better with other cards. And they need to be unpunishable, because if, let's say, you play a Sparky in the back and they keep pressuring the opposite lane until you literally cannot support it in any way, at the end your Sparky will get countered really easily for less than 1 elixir, meaning that the Sparky is more of a reactive card that you play into things rather than playing it in the back actively. But if the card you played in the back was like a Dark Prince, at worst case, even if you couldn't support him, you really won't lose that much elixir on him, as he mostly gets his elixir's worth back. My goal with this system is not only to teach you that some cards are garbage when played in the back actively, but I want you to understand that a witch in the back might be a good play in some matchups like Giant Double Prince, where it can clog up the lane entirely, and a horrible play in other matchups where they have cards that straight up feed on the witch and gives them 5 free elixir with minimal effort. So try to learn the relationship between each card and decide if you want to play your cards on the same lane or the opposite lane of your opponent's cards. Now, I'm hoping with this video that you can use your skills to decide where to play your... Dude, what the f***? I spent weeks making this. I literally... Stop ignoring me. Bro, you are just... What even is the point of anything? You know what? F*** you. No end screen yap. You are no longer my dude.